So, what creates anxious attachment? So, lots of different things create anxious attachment. The first one is an inconsistent caregiver, an inconsistent parent. This is a big one. So, a parent that is in and out a lot. Maybe sometimes they're very attentive to you, other times they're not there. Or maybe they were there up until a certain age and then they left and then they came back or they never came back. Inconsistent caregivers, also children of parents who have addictions, alcoholism, alcoholics, those children, they deal with a lot of instability and walking around on eggshells. They never know what they're going to get from their caregiver. They don't know if they're going to be nice or if they're going to be upset or if they're going to be sleeping or if they're going to be really, really talkative. That instability, not knowing to what expect, that causes anxiety in a child from a young age. Another thing is emotionally unavailable parents or people. So, when children have emotions, right? And when a child is trying to express their emotions, they're crying, they're angry, they're upset. Then if a parent is emotionally unavailable, they're not able to hold those emotions for the child. The child becomes very alone. They feel like nobody's there for them. They don't know how to cope with their own emotions. And sometimes emotionally available parents can cause an anxious attachment style. Maybe that parent was also very anxious and clingy towards you, and then you became anxious and clingy towards them, and it just become this like codependent dynamic. So it can be either side of that spectrum when it comes to emotionally available to unavailable parents. Divorce. Your parents were together and then you turned 12 and now they're separated. Causes a lot of anxiety for a child, causes a lot of adjustment. That's a huge adjustment going from having the family unit. That's all you are used to. That is how you've been ingrained. That is what you have learned. And then all of a sudden, dad isn't around anymore. All of a sudden, your mom hates your dad. And they spent all these years loving each other. Maybe they spent all these years fighting each other. Walking on eggshells, emotional unpredictability, critical parents, parents who are really critical, and this can develop people pleasers. So kids who always got criticism or you're doing this wrong, they only got praise or attention when they were like not doing something wrong. This develops people pleasers. And so they're always seeking reassurance. Am I going to get pleased or am I going to get reprimanded? It creates anxiety and they're looking for that praise and that positivity from their parent. And if they don't get it, they get really scared on like what's going to happen. Needing to earn love. That's a big one. Sometimes a lot of parents, and maybe your parents or whoever, but they only really give you love and attention through achievements. Oh, you did so good on your test. I'm going to do all these special things for you. And if you're not achieving things, then I don't really give you attention. So then that child becomes like a super overachiever and can get burnt out, overwhelmed, and stressed. We could go in so many different directions with this. Another thing is feeling responsible for parents. If the kid feels like they have to take on extra responsibility, that can be another reason. So it doesn't require severe trauma to have anxious attachment style. Even children with very normal, non-traumatic childhoods can develop anxious attachment style. I see it all the time. Little experiences that are repeated thousands of times could start to shape the brain. So what happens whenever you have, in your childhood, in your upbringing, is your nervous system starts to learn with anxious attachment that love feels uncertain, or I have to work for a connection, or people leave. I'm not sure when I'm going to see this person again. I need to stay hyper aware at all times. I got to stay on guard. I got to stay on alert because I never know what's going to happen. So having these things that the brain learns, children who grow up in like unpredictable, unstable, and all those things that I mentioned, households, it wires their brain and it creates that first draft. It creates the instruction manual for like, this is how relationships are because this is how I am with my mom. This is how I am with my dad. This is how they are with each other. Children are sponges. They're absorbing everything. So fast forward 20 years, your nervous system is still running on the same software unless you take a look at it, which is what you are doing right now by listening and watching to this podcast episode. So unless you are aware of it and you take steps to heal it, and that is with anything, you are going to run on that same software that you've been running on since you were a child.